Campbell with Home Smart Eye Care Realty. I call this segment Ask the Experts because in the realty world, we're often asked questions that go beyond our scope, and we need the advice of experts. So one of those areas that we often need advice is home insurance. And we have an insurance expert on with us, Scott Yuill. Scott, you've been doing insurance for quite a few years now, correct?
32 years, going on 33.
Amazing for a guy who's only in his early 40s. So
yeah, thank you. I don't know what you're asking. Flattery will get you everywhere.
So Scott, here's a common scenario in the real estate world, and it kind of floors me every time, because as realtors, when we're working with a buyer, and I know that lenders do this as well, we say, okay, you've got to get all set up with homeowners insurance before they'll close your loan. And it's amazing how many times people get caught up in, and I know there's a lot for them to get caught up in. They're packing, they're getting ready to move, they're excited about the new home they're purchasing, and they kind of put that on the back burner. So I wanted to get with you and ask for some advice on choosing homeowners insurance and when somebody should do it. A big question we often get is about the costs. Do you suggest that people should shop home insurance quite a bit before it's ready to sign the loan docs?
Well, yes. As a matter of fact, especially now, there's a bit of a homeowners crisis because a lot of the wildfire areas, and so you're finding a lot of insurance carriers aren't even writing in certain areas. Especially if you're a new home buyer and you haven't had a homeowner's policy or a relationship with a homeowner's before, you should get up front when you're doing your loan paperwork and everything else. Make sure when you've identified the property, is it something that can be written, or does it face any of those situations where you might be declined because it's in a wildfire area? And every insurance company you deal with is a little different. You know, they interpret the wildfire areas a little bit differently. So absolutely. And we get calls frequently from somebody who's kind of a little last minute, going to close tomorrow kind of thing, and I can't because I can't get insurance, and then it's panic mode. So you need to avoid that.
Right. What are some of the things that make a homeowner's policy more or less expensive than another policy, or from one property to the next? What are some of the things that might show up as creating a difference in price?
Well, obviously there's competition. There's a lot of carriers out there, and they all have different pricing models. So you're always looking at that. But you also want to know what that policy covers. And they are, well, in large part, very similar. There are some differences. And so types of coverages that one may have over the other affect the rates. Okay. Clearly, the size of the home and the replacement cost value to insure, that greatly affects the rate. And your where the home is. Again, that getting into the higher wildfire areas, you can see increased rates there. But the other piece, when you're shopping for a home, generally you're thinking about making sure that the home is covered if it burns down. But there are a lot of other components to the homeowner's insurance. Right. The amount of personal property that you have, the liability, which is often overlooked, but the liability coverage and the types of liability coverage you need. And as a matter of fact, how does that coordinate with your auto insurance? And do you need an umbrella policy? Those are all areas that can affect ultimately the cost of a homeowner's policy.
Okay. And you mentioned auto insurance, and this is really mostly just for my curiosity, but when we go to get auto insurance, our past driving record affects us. Instead, it's not just about the vehicle we're in, it's about our personal record. Is there anything like that when it comes to a homeowner's policy as far as the person getting it, or is it strictly based on the property itself?
Well, no, that's a good point. I did omit that earlier. When you're looking for a carrier before you close, if you're an existing homeowner and you had a claim, sometimes in the last year, maybe 2 or 3 years, if you had a claim, there's a likelihood that a new carrier won't insure you until you had enough time pass between claims. So yes, claims can affect whether or not you're insurable at all. Some companies might have a bit of a rate increase with a claim, some and start giving discounts for claim free. So it does affect it, not as dramatically typically as an auto policy though.
Okay. And when we're shopping for a homeowner's policy, I mean, I think we all fall under the same category of we look at price first,
Mhm.
but there's obviously more to it than just price. You get what you pay for. What are just a couple of quick key elements that we should make sure our homeowner's policy includes?
Well, it is, I mean, like I'm a consumer as well too, and I'm looking at price. I'm always looking at price, but it is difficult when you're shopping for home insurance specifically because it's hard to know what's in that policy. And it is a large, comprehensive policy. It is broad in scope and broad in coverage. All right. So by and large, the structure of the home and how that's insured in your personal property is generally similar when you're comparing,
Mhm.
but how that company performs on its claims, its
Okay.
accessibility. There are and I've worked the trenches with total losses, handing out checks and helping people through that. And when you're from the Paradise fires to the Santa Rosa fires, when when it's complete devastation and you have no one to talk to or can't get through, that's when you really can distinguish between a good policy or a bad policy. And unfortunately, you don't experience that until you're in crisis mode.
Uh-huh. Okay. In this area, what are some of the more common claims that you see? I mean, obviously, you mentioned Paradise, and that at one time, sadly so, there was a very common claim there. But here in Placer County, what are some of the common homeowners claims that
Well,
you?
we think in terms of the fires, and clearly those are devastating, and they're massive in scale. Some of these, but actually, if in insurance statistics or dig into them on a national basis, really the number one claim I believe is water damage. Burst pipes, plumbing ruptures, things like that. As a matter of fact, it's a sensitive area because when you have a plumbing failure in a house, a lot of companies get a little skittish about that and thinking, well, there could be a problem, and typically there might be a problem with the plumbing system in general. So they might require additional underwriting to make sure to certify that it's okay. But water losses tend to be the largest, most frequent, and the most financial loss.
Okay. And Scott, as a 32-year veteran with State Farm Insurance, you've probably seen your share of claims. What's the craziest claim you've seen?
Well, claims are rough. Not to get too serious here, but like I said, handling total losses, that really, that challenges everything, just emotionally. But I would say, well, while this isn't funny, I had a claim once where somebody called to say, hey, somebody just stole my roof. They got home from work, and the contractor across the street had the wrong address and came in and took their entire roof off. They came home to no roof.
Oh,
So
no.
that,
Well, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
I guess we can laugh now,
In a way,
but
it is
that
yeah.
would be a little tricky coming home to discover that you have no roof. Yeah.
As long as that doesn't happen to me, that's kind of funny.
Exactly
That
right.
happens to me.
Exactly right. Yeah.
That's not funny at all.
No, not at all. But
Oh,
crazy things happen. And getting back to the homeowners policy in general, it's a very comprehensive contract. So you really need to spend some time with an insurance professional and understand they can understand your needs and make sure they're tailoring that policy for all your needs and not just to close the loan, because at that point you're just really concerned about getting the loan closed. But let's
right.
make sure the policy is appropriate.
Very good. So let's pound it home, Scott. When should they start looking for their homeowners insurance policy?
As soon as if you're going to finance, I speak with a lot of lenders as well. That should be part of the protocol in the early stages of getting qualified for a loan.
Okay.
Make sure that the property you've identified is insurable, and get some clarity at that juncture early on, not the last day, not even the last week.
Very good. Well, thanks so much, Scott Yuill of State Farm Insurance, a 32-year veteran in the insurance business. So definitely an expert when it comes to asking the experts. Appreciate all your great information, Scott. And how does one get a hold of you if they have any additional questions?
Well, if you're shameless marketing here, we can call my office at 916-772-2131. I've got a very complete team here of licensed professionals as well that can serve you and get you quick answers. You can always call me as well if you need it anytime after hours.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Scott. Really appreciate the information.
Thank you, Bruce. Good luck.